We are ready to go.
Order the meeting of the West Sound Township Planning Commission tonight, Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026 at 7:01 p.m. And the first order of business is pledge of allegiance. If you would please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next order of business is the adoption of the minutes of our meeting on July 8th, 2026. And before we do that, is there another set that we're all set to go then?
Yes, the adoption of agenda first.
You see before us the agenda, the draft agenda tonight. And motions in order.
Make a motion that we adopt the agenda for today, Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026.
Second. Sorry, is there any discussion? Change something, delete something, add something? Now's our chance. All right, I'm going to call a question. All those in favor of adopting the agenda presented, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Opposed, the agenda is adopted for tonight, July 22nd, 2026. Now we are the approval of the minutes for our meeting on July 8th, 2026. So motions in order.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes for July, the planning commission, the minutes for July 8th, 2026.
Second. All right, are there any changes? Are there any corrections? Are there any concerns?
No. This is not to do with your agenda, but just before the spring went here, a word came out and said their meeting's over, and then went to the spring, so I'm not sure if you're live on your Zoom.
Okay, let me check.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Sure that we're live.
Yeah.
I was waiting for somebody to miss. And I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you for coming.
It does say it's live streaming, but yeah, it does say that it's live streaming. Yeah, it's. Let me check. I'll just check on my phone very quick.
That's what I was gonna say, right,
Hmm?
you go into the live stream?
Yeah, I just want to make sure. It's we've been having issue with the click share. Live. Oh yes, we are live. Very quick.
That's what
Oh.
I was gonna say, right, you go
Yep.
20 seconds past live.
Yep, there is a delay with live streaming, but we should be all good.
All right, any corrections or changes? No. I have one suggestion, and that is on page 4, Milla,
Mm-hmm.
item 2, ordinance amendments.
Mm-hmm.
It says conservative design.
Oh,
Really
Thank you.
conservation design, but it could be conservative.
in some ways.
Liberal.
Thank
That's
you.
good. All right, all those in favor of adopting the minutes that's presented with that change as indicated, signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? No opposed. The minutes of the meeting of July 8th, 2026 are adopted. Next, we move on to announcements. Ms. Carter.
I have an announcement that the township received final land development application for Stokes Estate Stonecroft last Friday. We also received last week a request for extension of time to submit final plans and supplementary documents related to the proposed development. The applicant appeared at the Board of Supervisors meeting on Monday, and that extension has been granted. That extension expires September 19, 2026. So the next step would be for township staff to review application for completeness before upcoming Monday, and for the township consultants to start their review of the application, as well as to make sure that it's compliant with the settlement agreement. And then it will be placed on the planning commission meeting for a quick cursory review before the Board of Supervisors meeting.
When do you think, Noah, it will be here for a quick review?
So we are, I would say, probably second meeting in August. Your first meeting in August, you might see a DiSabatino landscaping application. So your second meeting in August might be the Stokes.
And I think I read somewhere that the applicant has decided not to attend the planning commission review.
They indicated that they would like to be on the Board of Supervisors agenda, and they did not indicate that they will be coming to the planning commission, but I can follow up to confirm. That was before they submitted an extension and revised plans. But all the plans are online. It took us a while to upload them because documents are quite extensive. I'm awaiting paper copies because you probably would like to see paper copies ahead of time. It's 85 sheets.
They don't know how to condense PDFs.
Yes, they're not flattened. So they break my computer. Just it's extensive PDF. So but that's with the land development submission. No zoning hearing board applications so far.
Dining hall second.
Hmm?
And dining hall.
Well, dining hall is Westtown School dining hall project will be heading to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
I have not heard from Dunkin' Donuts, so they did receive an approval from the zoning hearing board, but I haven't heard and a car wash. We're still waiting the further discussion on a car wash.
I actually saw those guys down in town Monday night. And the impression I got is we're not gonna see that before the end of the month.
Okay, yeah, they did say they're not gonna be back until the end of summer. Yep,
Are there any other announcements?
no.
All right, then we're gonna move on to public comment, non-agenda items. The public's opportunity to comment on any issue that's not currently on our agenda tonight. It can be any. Oh, the food. We're good. Is there anything, there are no.
No.
I don't have to give a lecture about, how long we have. All right, so we'll move on to new business, and there is no new business tonight. We're gonna move on to old business then, and the first item is number 1, is ordinance amendments, parking provisions for single family dwellings. Continued discussion on potential change regulations involving parking on residential lots. And you see in the packet of materials that staff have made some changes to the residential parking provisions, and I suggest that unless other members disagree, that Noah describe what changes were proposed and why.
Sure. So just to recap, and you have your meeting minutes in front of you from the last meeting where we've had some attendance from residents asking questions and raising concerns about residential parking. So you can subdivide it into different issues. One, there was questions about parking on grass. There were questions about parking within the driveway that's located within the first half of the front yard. There were questions about parking on a street, and there were questions about whether current regulations regarding commercial vehicle parking is sufficient for the size of the commercial vehicles that you would see within the residential area. So what this township staff has done a little bit of research, and we didn't dive too much into adjacent municipalities regulations because we were trying to avoid a domino effect of having to revise a lot of the zoning language. So we were just trying to address one specific issue differently. So when it comes to grass parking in Chester County, majority of municipalities, bless you, prohibit parking on grass for various reasons that we discussed. So we don't have explicitly, our regulation explicitly don't state that. It just says that the parking shall be provided on dust-free, all-weather surface. So that could be revised. This is just a suggestion. We believe that keeping it as is works as well, or we can add a language that states that. The second issue, or I guess the main issue, was parking areas within the first half of the driveway. So regulations that you see, the 177, 170-1701, the location, what we added.
This is in our health commissioners too.
Oh, right.
Remember that this is in our zoning ordinance. It's not a solid.
Correct.
Provision. It's in the zoning. It's not a single use power.
Correct. So.
It's in-
No, yeah, so on the location 170-1701, when it talks about this specific requirement about minimum distance for parking areas, we added language except as provided in 170-1708. And what that new
So the only change there in D is the addition of the phrase except as provided in section 170-1708.
correct. Yep. So, and then if you go to section 1708, parking standards for single family residential dwellings, it addresses 3 issues. So number 1, and Al Federico provided today this little sample. Would you like a copy? I have another copy if you want. It's kind of like a guide for different types of what we were trying to figure out. How would you limit? How would you define? If you just define commercial vehicles, it would be very broad. And which ones you can define them by weight. The motor vehicle code has specific definitions. So what Al provided you with is it's kind of a chart. I like that it shows different classes, light duty, medium duty, heavy duty. So what's drafted here is trying to say that here is the dimensions of the commercial vehicle type that might be permitted in residential area. And here is, it cannot exceed a specific weight. We can revise it any other way, but we have to have a conversation about what types of vehicles you think shall be permitted in the residential area. Is it class 1, class 2? Is it class 3? Because they have different dimensions and different weight limits. So that would be first question.
Okay, so, you proposed commercial vehicles with a size requirement,
Correct.
size max. And then a weight. Max.
Yeah, so the way that it's written now, that would be light duty. So you would see light duty class, so that's the type that would be able to park, so
Yeah, then those diagram, it's a pickup truck, a van, a larger pickup truck, a box van.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's +1. If we,
One and two.
yeah, 1 and 2. If you would like to go a little larger, then we go into medium duty. So that's probably landscaping. Like if you work for landscaping company and you would like to take your truck home and park that within your driveway, so you are within medium duty. But then we go up to 14,000 pounds as opposed to 10,000 pounds. So that's all a matter of preference.
Well, it looks to me, please chime in, commissioners, it looks to me as though class 2 light duty vehicles, commercial vehicles includes rather large passenger vehicles. And
Like a minivan.
like a minivan, or a maxi van.
Mhm.
If I may,
But, so we'll give you. Thank you. And it looks like a certain kind of box van will be okay. I'm feeling like that would be okay.
It's all, yeah, it's all matter of preference.
Well, it does have implications for aesthetics. That's one of the attributes that zoning can address. What are we feeling? Or do you want to go through it and then talk about it?
No, I think 1 and 2 are sufficient feasible. I do have a question. Go to year 4, what kind of weight limits are in the driveway itself? Are they built for?
Do we have residential driveway waiting?
Well, we do have design standards for driveways, but most those areas where there is a sidewalk, I believe.
Frankly, our paving standards are probably a bit dated. But, I mean, in general, when we're talking about the suitability of pavement, it's an exponential impact as the axle load gets higher. We generally presume that light duty vehicles do almost no damage to pavement as you start getting heavier. I would suspect that most of our residential driveways could accommodate the class 3 medium duty vehicles on a regular basis.
Class 3.
The class 3 could probably be accommodated. Once you start getting up to class 4. I can't speak to without actually looking at some of the design guidelines, but you start getting into those heavier vehicles, if there's repeated loading, there may be an issue on the pavement.
Yes, and if you resurface in your driveway, you don't really have to apply for a permit with the township. So you can pave whatever you would like, asphalt, concrete. We don't really check on that.
I mean, typically, it's not the top layer that's the determining factor when we're talking about accommodating large vehicles. It's the sub.
It's a base.
So, I mean, you could put several inches of asphalt on it, if you're just putting it over dirt, that's gonna deform.
In your experience, out, hot weather, that the driveway, really hot.
Not in this region. I mean, you will see deformation, some of the classic examples, like when it gets hot, if you go around 30th Street Station in Philadelphia. Where the buses are stopping regularly. You see this in Upper Darby coming down the hill, 69th Street, where the pavement, if it's asphalt, will start pushing
Right.
and sliding.
Creates ripples.
But again, that's the surface.
No, you're good.
When typically the issue is when the base starts failing and you see what we call alligator cracking. Like little squares on the pavement, that means the base is deforming. And then what happens is you start getting water infiltration. And in our climate, that's horrible because we go through several freeze thaw cycles each spring and fall, and that'll just start blowing the pavement out. But with respect to what we're talking about here, I would suggest that the residential driveways, if they were built to code, could handle at least up to, can definitely handle 1 and 2, probably handle up to 3.
Probably.
I'm confident about 3 over. I would need to start looking a little bit deeper.
Okay, so, our expert says low probability of consequences for, class 3 medium duty trucks. And our current ordinance allows 1. And it can't be in the front yard. So it could be in the side yard or the backyard. Assuming that there is a suitable surface. For instance, it can't be, right now, it can't be parked on the grass. How are we thinking about that?
That one part of that.
All of it. Any of it.
Well, I think it can park anywhere as long as it's within the driveway. Well, except it has to be past that half of the front yard.
So it can be parked in the front.
Yes, because it does not say that it's limited to rear yards or side yards.
Okay, so up to class 3 in the driveway.
So if it's up to class 3, then we have to wait, including? Yeah, then it would be 14,000 pounds, except instead of 10,000 pounds are prohibited. Okay,
How about the size limitations?
so
You proposed 20, no more than 20 feet in overall length, no more than 8 feet in overall width, and no more than 9 feet in overall height. So it could be class 3, but if you can't meet those standards, you can't park.
yes, and I can do a little bit more dive for now that we are talking, we know which classes we are looking at to see what the class 3 medium duty largest vehicle might be, and I can take those dimensions.
How are we feeling about that size limitation? That's a fairly sizable vehicle, 20 feet is a big vehicle.
There'd be like a U-Haul, smaller U-Haul truck would fit that.
A box trucker is,
Box truck.
the example I was giving earlier today is, the plumbing truck with the picture of the guy, on the back waving to you like he's about to fall out the back. I mean, I think that, that sort of box truck,
Okay.
I think is what we would be getting up to, but I'd have to double check them.
All right, I'm feeling comfortable with that. You feel what? I'm feeling comfortable with the size limitation and the class 3 up to 14,000 pounds per square foot.
Okay, and then the next provision is
And
D.
you're gonna have, sorry, have comment on that.
And then under D, so just a quick here, so shall be met by paving. The changes that we made here, first of all, is just to say that all the pervious surfaces can be used, but they are subject to stormwater management regulations. Just the way that this chapter was written was not very, or this section was written, it was not very clear how it's consistent with impervious coverage definition that's in stormwater management regulations. The use of gravel as a parking surface shall be subject to approval by the board and may be used for reserve or overflow parking. So what we were trying to address here, the way that it was written is that the board, it's subject to board's approval to use gravel. However, we want to specify that pervious surfaces are subject to stormwater management regulations. I had a little bit of discussion with the township engineer about whether or not pervious surfaces, the way that it was written is that a pervious surfaces are subject to approval by the board, but the board of supervisors would probably rely on a township engineer review to determine whether or not it shall be permitted. But then on the stormwater management regulations, the way that they are written, they promote the use of pervious material. So why would you ask somebody to come to the Board of Supervisors for approval if we are trying to promote the use of pervious pavers? So we just restructured it a little bit. Gravel is different. Gravel, the request that we usually receive about gravel is just to use it for temporary parking, like if somebody does construction and they need their contractor to park somewhere, they would just lay out gravel areas and then they would take it away. They're very temporary. As you know, we just had one request from the resident on, was it Cheney or Carmack? About the use of gravel parking areas that the board granted them an approval for because they don't want to park on grass, but they're still trying to get everything needed for a permit to build a garage. So they asked, can we have gravel parking for the next year so that we can get the garage built and then we would remove the gravel parking areas. So this is the section where if you would like to include clear language that the parking on grass is prohibited, we can include that. If it needs to be defined that way.
Let's stop there for a minute. So if you want to have porous paving surfaces for your parking, you can use such things as porous paving or concrete lattice blocks,
Mhm.
but you must comply with our chapter 144 stormwater management.
Correct.
And that would involve some analysis and engineering review.
It would involve
In all cases.
all cases.
All cases.
So the way the definition is written for impervious coverage under stormwater management, anytime you want to use pervious pavers, it's subject to approval by the township engineer, so you do have to provide an engineered plan. And I don't know how much you know about pervious pavers, but there are different kinds, and unless you maintain them, they don't really, over time, they just become as just a concrete. The same, they don't really retain water anymore if you don't maintain them on a regular basis. So so far in West Town, we issued one permit for impervious parking area on Sissinghurst. I'm sure you're familiar with the application. The property went to the zoning hearing board for variance from impervious surfaces, because they built a swimming pool and a deck and they were above the impervious. It's been 3 years ago, even more than that. So they are constructing that impervious driveway right now.
Impervious?
Oh, pervious, I'm sorry, pervious, yes. They're constructing it right now. In the past, or in the past couple of years, residents did inquire about if I'm above 20%, can I just build a driveway to a pervious driveway so that I'm under 20% maximum allowable coverage? So the township, speaking with township engineer, you just have to submit an engineered plan to show that your proposed pervious driveway and parking areas would function as a stormwater management, best management practice. In that case, you might be on the 20% of impervious coverage.
So then you could build something else. That way.
Yes, but it's been a while, but I think we might need to take a look at the definition of impervious on the zoning, because it's not very consistent with the definition, the same definition on the stormwater management regulations.
Okay. They should be, my opinion.
Yeah, in zoning, it says something that parking areas are considered impervious as long as the coefficient of runoff is, and I think it's 0.3 or something like that.
Okay.
Is it 7? Oh, did you find it? Okay. Yeah, so yes, under zoning, impervious surface, sorry, under zoning, area covered by roofs, paving, and other man-made materials that have a coefficient of a runoff of 0.8 or greater. For the purposes of determining compliance with this chapter, stone surfaces routinely used for vehicle parking and movement shall be considered impervious. So we've had situations, thank you, where couple of contractors and residents would inquire, what if I'm using plastic pavers? It's not a stone surface. Can I be then, I don't have to comply with that specific zoning regulations. So it might be something to look into. I'm just bringing up. I think it's something worth looking into at a later time.
Later time. Okay.
Because otherwise you're gonna have a domino effect of everything else.
Well, does our zoning ordinance define gravel?
No,
All right, so you can have stone gravel, you can have plastic gravel, you can have something else, right?
there's such thing as a plastic gravel.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so it's
You can use slag, doing all kinds of stuff, can be used.
so like in other municipalities, the definition of impervious surface on the zoning mimics the definition of impervious on the stormwater management regulations.
I think it should.
Because it is hard to, like, when we get a question, how would I prove that coefficient of runoff is 0.8 or greater or less? It's hard to do so without an engineered plan.
Yeah, and can I ask that was one of the questions, if they have to do stormwater or chapter 144, what, just to kind of.
What that means?
How much money do they have to lay out, see, is it
So
burdensome to have to jump through that hoop?
So it always is once you exhaust your exemption. So every property in West Down Township has an exemption of 1,000 square feet of regulated impervious before installation of stormwater management facility is required. The way that that's regulated impervious is calculated, it's from December 2013, is a specific date. So anything you add after this date cumulatively, if you are adding, expanding a driveway and you're still under 1,000 square feet, it says you have to comply with stormwater management. Yes, it means you're supposed to provide, you have to apply for a permit, you have to put erosion and sediment control measures in place, but you might not need to install stormwater management facility. Then your driveway expansion will only cost you for the cost of driveway construction. If before you decided to expand the driveway, you built shed, addition, swimming pool, some other walkways, patio, and now with the driveway addition, you are above 1,000 square feet, that means that you would have to do infiltration trench or any other stormwater management BMP, as long as you compliant with that chapter. So now on top of driveway construction, you have to pay for stormwater management facility. So every property is different. What we've seen in most cases, residents or applicants propose to remove portions of the driveway to account for addition or patio expansions that they are trying to complete, so they don't have to do stormwater management. So driveway is usually the first one to go.
So the quick answer. Yes. First. It is more costly and intense. However, the rationale behind stormwater management is to prevent runoff, of infiltration. And that has happened over decades, because the easiest stuff to take care of was stuff that came out of the pipe. Stuff that runs over the it's into our shooting rivers, ponds, and lakes. Has come more recently because we can't meet our water safety
Because, yeah.
without this kind of measure.
Yeah, but one of the things just want to touch on. There's really not many options because from my understanding, yes, we do have a simplified approach. Simplified approach means that if you are above 1,000 square feet, but less than 2,000 square feet, you can use it's like a simplified approach handbook. You don't have to hire an engineer. You can go step by step, and many of our residents have done that. But under simplified approach, there are some conditions that some property owners are not able to meet. So you have to connect all of the downspouts to that infiltration trench. You're maxing out in a size. It has to be located in such a way that there are specific setbacks that need to be met. But you also have to have enough of the roof area. So if you're building a swimming pool and you need to install an infiltration trench, it's not runoff from the pool that's being diverted into the trench. It's from the existing house, from existing roof area that's being diverted to this trench. So it does add to the construction cost. Once you're above 2,000 square feet, or if you would like to consider things like pervious pavement, you have no choice but get an engineer who can run the calculations and tell you, you need to capture X amount of square foot of impervious. This is different ways to do it. It's hard to do without engineer doing those calculations, so.
I would defer to the solicitor and the township engineer. But I also believe that the stormwater management ordinance was adopted as part of a bigger issue that may be coming from government organizations above the municipal level. If you read the introduction to stormwater management ordinance, it talks about the National Pollution Discharge.
Yep, Reduction Act.
Yeah, that there's particularly, and we are in the Chesapeake watershed, I believe.
Yep.
So that there's a much bigger framework.
Maybe not.
The Delaware, it's somewhere in I forgot. I again, this is why I defer to solicitor and the township engineer. I don't do this as much, but like. There was a big push several years back for all the municipalities. To adopt these standalone stormwater management ordinances.
Yeah, 2017, we adopted one in 2017, and then the revised version, which became a little bit more, the first version that we had in 2017, it was different. With every project, you were able to add up to, I think, 1,000 or 2,000 square feet of impervious without having to do stormwater management facility. So every time you apply, it kind of resets how much you can add. But in 2021, when the revised ordinance was adopted, that's the ordinance that required having a township engineer review. And that's what made it a little bit more costly for property owners.
Okay, so in section 1708D. You can use porous pavement and concrete lattice blocks. As
Correct.
long as it's subject to chapter 144 or stormwater management ordinance. You can use gravel as a parking service if the board approves for reserve or overflow parking. So to me, that means extra parking beyond the driveway,
Mhm.
beyond the dust-free all-weather surface.
Yes, and I don't know if these provisions were ever used. So originally, the language said pervious surfaces such as porous paving, concrete lattice blocks, or gravel may be substituted if approved by the board for reserve or overflow parking.
So we're saying, as I understand, it, we're saying that certain porous pavement can be used for regular parking purposes.
Correct.
In a driveway. But gravel could be used if approved by the Board of Supervisors for reserve or overflow parking. Not for the regular driveway surface.
I wonder which development went in 2017.
I can't remember why that was adopted.
Reserve.
And I'll note there that if the board approves, that's a way that the provisions of the zoning ordinance can be relieved without having to go to the zoning hearing board for a variance. So it's sort of like a streamlined approval process, but you still need to get the board of supervisors to say yes to.
Correct. Yeah, I left that in because I didn't want to make too many changes unless there is a reason why we have to change that. I wasn't sure why it was there in the first place.
I'm just trying to understand. I just wanted to see if we understand what it's saying. And I think we do. Any comments? Okay, let's move on to E. This would be F.
Yeah, so DEF. Yep. So this addresses parking and driveways within.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Parking and driveways within the required front yard. No motor vehicle shall be parked or permanently stored within the portion of a driveway located in a right-of-way of any public street except for temporary parking for loading, unloading, or active passenger pickup or drop-off, not exceeding 30 minutes.
Okay, so this, as I understand it, this could reduce this prohibited area, which heretofore was 1 hand. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, it looks like you can park all the way up to the right of way,
Mm-hmm.
and you leave your car there as long as you want. But if you're in the highway right of way, you can only park there temporarily according to these standards.
Correct.
All right.
So the example would be township-owned local roadways, right away is 50 feet. So I would say 25 feet from the center line of local road in, past that line, you can park within your driveway. That's gonna, you're gonna be outside of the right of way. So local streets is 50, minor roads would be, so like a Jacqueline Drive would be a minor street, that would be 60 feet. And then it goes to 80 feet for arterials.
Could you articulate why it is that the township might want to prohibit parking other than temporary parking in the right of way?
For safety concerns, so that we don't have street lights in most of the township, just to ensure that there is no encroachment from the rear of the car, front in the car, in the public right of way. Also for sight distance, depending where the property is located, if it's a corner lot, or if it's on a really tight street. Also to provide clearance for sidewalks in the areas where we do have a sidewalks, like, Pleasant Grove neighborhood, there is a sidewalk so that there is no blocking, of the sidewalk. And then we were trying to find a way of addressing some of the safety concerns while allowing for most of the driveway and future expanded parking areas to be within the front yards. So if somebody applies for a permit now, they can be 20, as long as you're 25 feet, more than 25 feet from the center line of the roadway, you can technically create additional pool of parking area off your driveway. Right now, you have to go half. So first of all, you go 25 feet from the right of way, from the center line. Then you have to go half of the front yard. So if it's a 40 feet required setback, so it's additional 20 feet. So you have to be 45 feet before you can expand your parking. So it's all about how close, and justification is like how close those parking areas shall be towards the roadways, and with where they shall be located within the front yard.
Well, I'll go. I can see some safety issues that were created by allowing parking on driveways all the way out to the end of the driveway. They would be things like blocked visibility at the driveway exit, reduced nighttime visibility, pedestrian vehicle conflict like sidewalks, confusing grand layouts sometimes might be created by this, and obstructive access control. I think that emergency vehicles might have an issue
That's right, they usually pull in that area.
getting into the driveway. And if the driveway is completely full, they have to park on the street and somehow get to the resident. So I don't know how consequential those issues are, but I see them as an issue. So, okay, I think I'm tentatively okay with the way that you changed this to measure the parking, the parking prohibited right of way out to the street. No parking except for temporary events.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just looking for clarification. I'm a little slow. When we're saying the right of way, we're talking about the roadway.
I think we're.
It's a legal,
No, I'm just talking, physically, I'm just going very basic here. The
Cutway. So cutway is the paved area of the roadway. right of way is,
If they have, right.
Correct.
Beyond.
correct, but the property owner still own the land, yes, within the right of way.
Is any of that paved or is that like?
Some of them
stone
has
sorts?
shoulders, some of it has utilities, not just township utilities, it may be like Verizon and Aqua.
And what are you saying about parking, whether it's permanent or temporary parking for that aspect?
So I'm saying that temporary, you can park within the public right of way, but
Like it's off.
permanently, yes,
Like-
yeah.
Yeah, okay,
we
and so
do
that's
it.
just temporary.
Mhm.
Now for the driveway. That belongs to the homeowner. Originally, it was the
Half of a yard.
the front yard setback.
This would apply to the driveway within the ultimate right of way.
Mhm.
That you're not, you can only temporarily park.
Oh, yeah,
driveway
okay.
within that ultimate right.
Right, and
Which-
again, that's just temporary, picking up, dropping off, something like that.
And because driveway is connected to cutway, so you might be losing, I don't know, 20 feet of your driveway. It depends where the cutway ends versus how driveway comes in. It's hard to calculate,
Yeah,
but
no.
I would
yeah,
think
that's
probably
back to-
10. Yeah.
Have you, was anything that you just discussed? Before Jack spoke and now before I spoke, talking about that portion of the driveway that is not in the right of way with a car, the right of way.
Mhm.
Have you talked about that in terms of how far back we have to park? Or?
Oh, so-
That's 25 feet.
Yeah, so we have a section in the code, on the zoning called future right of way of streets. So for local streets, so that's the section that sets how wide, future right of way is, so it's 50 feet, 60, 80 feet, and 100,
From center.
depending on classification. So that's what we would use.
1.5 feet.
So, yeah, so that's the section that sets, how wide right away, so it would vary based on where you are, and of course with cul-de-sacs, there's a little bit more area of right away because of the shape of it, yeah, so
You're saying. The existing right of way, not future. right. Is it?
I would suggest it be the ultimate right of way.
it's an
per-
ultimate,
Per the zoning code.
Including the future, that would include. the
That would,
future.
right, that is the ultimate right.
Yeah.
On the roadway classification.
Regardless of whether it has been dedicated to the township. That, so if you've got your normal local street, say a 28-foot wide street, you have a 50-foot right of way. So you're going 14 feet to the end of the cartway. Then you've got another 11 feet into the driveway that you could only park in
once in a while.
temporarily. And then beyond that 11 feet, I think, or beyond that edge,
Mhm.
you could
You-
park.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, so it would impact.
Why would you recommend? Temporary parking only in the future right of way?
I'm recommending this be based on the future right of way because not all the right of ways have been dedicated over the years. And in order to maintain a consistent, clear area adjacent to the road for the issues you enumerated, I would also suggest that in traffic engineering, we like to, what we call the clear zone, not that, where you try to avoid things right up against the road. So that if somebody does lose control of the vehicle, they have some opportunity to correct.
Where the kids run out.
Right, but I think referencing the ultimate right of way as presented in the zoning code in 1511 would be more appropriate.
But in doing that, we would be taking away more of the permanent parking area that the residents.
It's less,
I don't believe so, because the setbacks that are referenced in the previous code or
Are
in
much
the current
extensive.
code are actually measured from the edge of the right of way.
Yeah, so that's if you have right away.
So I was saying, we would add a little bit, it wouldn't be the same, it wouldn't be as much as the current regulation prohibits.
This would be a decrease in the current prohibition.
You're giving the homeowner more.
More of their driveway to use.
Yes.
And more,
I guess that's ultimately where I was trying to grasp.
and more opportunities to expand your driveway in your front yard. Versus having to be set back too far to be able to expand your driveway.
Little bump outs.
Like bump out, yeah, like parking areas. So, yeah, so you can completely rewrite residential parking regulations. Our goal was to make changes just enough to allow for less restrictive parking within the driveways, address the commercial vehicles, clarify pervious surfaces use. But we have not really touched on parking on streets because that's a different code, it's not zoning.
We didn't talk about parking in grass in this section.
Okay.
You can, currently, you cannot. And my understanding is that there's some issues with parking on grass.
A lot.
Soil compaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, from an enforcement standpoint, you can always move the car. So if we get a complaint that somebody consistently parking on grass, we follow up with the warning letter, work with the property owner to correct it, and then most likely we will see an application for parking area expansion or addition. Like if you have RV that you can't consistently park on a grass, then you probably need additional parking area. But there are some seasonal variations. Like right now, there's a lot of people park on grass because they have kids home from college.
Yeah, and I mean, if I could jump in here too, I would like us to have less restrictions on parking, to allow people to park in whatever part of the driveway they want on grass. To me, I can understand some of the concerns, but ultimately, it's their house, it's their driveway. And if you're especially in, say, a Pleasant Grove neighborhood where you have, a lot of kids, they start all driving. If you can't fit all your cars in a parking area, and if you have a shorter driveway, you're bouncing up against something that I think the township should just allow the people to just be able to live their life without having to worry about, are we breaking this rule? Am I gonna get penalized for this? And I can't park on the street either. Because that's not allowed. And to me, it just seems like we are taking on something that we don't need to take on. Yeah, it's great that we wanna have, everything taken care of, that we don't want anyone to get potentially harmed, and we wanna make sure, if there's an emergency, stuff can be accessed easily, quickly, whatever, but to me, I was feeling for those people that were here last time. Just as like, this is our house, this is our cars, we need to park on the driveway. And the fact that we as a township could say, oh, you can't park in this half your driveway, to me, that just seems ridiculous. And an overstepping of what should be done. And, and so to me, it's like, I would like us to back off and to have less restrictions, allow them to park on the street from 2 AM to 8 AM if they need to allow them to park on the grass without making an issue about it. It's their house. And if there's a problem, let the neighbors talk to each other and work it out. And not have us come in and slap down stuff. To me, that just seems to be overstepping.
I
So-
would love the neighbors talking to each other instead
Right.
of calling the township.
I mean, the reason probably you're getting as many complaints as you are is because neighbors these days seem to talk to each other less.
Right.
I understand. I think to some level, though, there are the other items encompassed in zoning, such as the aesthetics. These have been the rules. I mean, these have been the rules since this has been adopted for a while. And understanding, this one section is the special carve out for single family residential, but it would also get applied to any new land development. And as we've had, numerous discussions
On
on some of
Stokes.
these land developments, we get into the question of how much parking. We went ad nauseum on Stokes about how many cars are they gonna be able to park on this place? Because they've only got the 24-foot road and the driveways, how many parking spaces really, I mean.
And a 6,000 square foot house.
Yeah, I mean, and with respect to, I'm gonna speak personally from the person on the other side with 3 kids. And living in a twin. Yeah, there was a time where we were strapped for parking. Kids are gone. Their cars are gone. The house is still there. On the long-term goal, and this goes back to stormwater management, how much impervious do we want to end up with? Because this is part of a larger issue that we're creating these downstream flooding events. Again, outside of transportation, kind of. But I don't think that some level of regulation personally is unreasonable. But I totally appreciate, that we want to provide the flexibility of the residents to enjoy their property. But that's why we have zoning to kind of put some guardrails on there.
Right, and I'm not saying I want our township to be junky, I wouldn't wanna live next to somebody who just has their car that they're perpetually working on sitting in their front yard, I totally understand
For
that.
30 years.
But. From what I was gathering from people, it's because they either don't have room to park, or they're in Pleasant Grove, or they have many kids, and it's, to me, it just. I'm concerned, like I said, that we're, being a hammer where we don't need it.
Right, and just to follow up on Brian, I'm sorry, just to follow up on Brian's point, it's not like over, if we grant greater flexibility for parking in their driveway that they own. It's not like overnight, all of a sudden, 4 additional cars are gonna miraculously appear and occupy that entire driveway. It's just not gonna happen. It's gonna be.
There's gonna be less complaints. Or,
Well, you're just gonna have, your kids are going from college, or your kids are visiting, you got relatives in for a week during the holidays or something like that. It's not gonna be every single driveway with people parked all the way out to the curb line. It's just not gonna happen that way. So I think you need to, or we collectively as a township need to grant greater flexibility for people to be able to use their driveways as they see fit.
so the other option would be, so if you would like to. If you would like to retain that the property owners can park within their driveway, no existing driveway, no matter whether it's within the right of way or not. But then make changes to the section in such a way that parking areas, instead of saying that parking areas shall be after that half of the front yard line, you can revise that to say additional parking areas could be past the right of way line. So you can lose that restriction a little bit. So if somebody does want to expand their parking, they can. instead of pushing it all the way closer to the, facade, of the house. So that's the other way. It's all about whether we are worried about the driveway, are we worried about parking within the driveway, or additional parking areas that would be added in the front yard. I think it's two different issues to address.
This doesn't. The changes that you made really don't address
The parking,
the construction of new driveways.
correct.
Driveway extension, but that's permitted now, might have to go through a storm
Mhm,
type analysis and engineering to accomplish it.
correct.
Okay, so what I've heard so far is that Chris and Brian would like to strike the balance more in favor of the homeowners' rights of parking on not only in what areas on the driveway we're talking about, all the way out to the right of way, and parking on grass. It's okay as far as Brian and Chris and me. I'm of another mind, and if you can explain to me how we're going to address the environmental issues that are associated, and safety issues that are associated with the striking the balance as you wish it to be, then I might be persuaded, but I haven't heard that yet. But Russ, where do you stand?
I'm of the mindset that the driveway should not be restricted. to This 20 feet, but I am opposed to parking in the front of the house. So,
When we say like front of the house too, I'm picturing in my mind. Like you come in your driveway, you have to walk away to the front door, so are you saying parking like on that side? Or saying, you have your garage, you have your parking, your driveway, and then you can park to the left side. Not towards, to the left side of the driveway, is that still considered front yard? I guess technically that would be correct.
Yeah.
The front and side yards are determined by the zoning area.
I consider pushing on that side. Okay. Cause that's the problem between you and the next cop, is that. Then you're gonna have to deal with, setback, obviously. I'm talking about directly, your front side of your house, to your side of your house. It's,
Okay, yeah, any more questions? If not, or concerns, I'm gonna ask the public to.
oh,
Sir.
Okay, I'll try to increase.
If you just push the button, you're all good. Yep,
Better.
it picks up the sound.
Okay, I think. We hear all of you, I understand the concerns. As a resident who has to deal with all of this stuff, few comments. To me, ordinances. They should be very targeted. Very specific. They should be written to benefit the residents the most. Not to benefit township administrators and folks who are trying to clean up the paperwork. I'm not saying that's any of you folks, but I am saying that 2003, maybe some people look at this that way, because this is very overly wrong. I have a suggestion for the right of way thing. I have no idea where the right of way comes on my yard, because you're saying, okay, it's half the distance to the street, it's another 11 feet, it's 50 feet off. That's some imaginary line across the front of my property. We're talking parking. Make the ordinance so that you can't park within 5 feet of the curb, or 5 feet of the street, or 2 feet of the sidewalk if there's a sidewalk. Very simple, everybody knows what that looks like. It takes care of your safety concerns because you're worried about vision, blocking somebody's view, keeps cars back off the street a little bit if somebody's drunk coming down the street. And they miss your mailbox and hit the car or something instead. But that's a much easier thing for everybody to understand than some fractional thing of a right of way and a setback. And all of those things, because I guarantee you that 99% of the residents have no clue what that means. I'm an engineer.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
What distance do you think is appropriate and from where?
I
This is somewhere.
personally, I would say, and this is just, you know, spitball, I would say like, okay, nothing within 4 feet of the curb. Whatever that is, the edge of the street.
Unless there's a sidewalk.
Unless there's a sidewalk, and then no, not within 2 feet of the sidewalk. You don't want people blocking the sidewalk, you don't want people with their cars out in the street or pretty close to out in the street. And I understand all that, that's a safety rule, and I don't think anybody has a problem with safety rules. Not being able to park in the front half of my driveway, that's got nothing to do with safety or anything else, that's just. To me, it feels like the township trying to be an HOA. Okay, and in Pleasantville, we're really happy that we don't have an HOA. And we really don't want to see the township turn into one. So, and that's the kind of rule you see, and those things were totally arbitrary. There's nobody so far in all of these discussions has actually articulated a reason for that setback and no parking. I understand that there's something to do with that people want to expand that, it gives you some control over how they do that, but to me, that's a separate thing if you want to do that in a zoning ordinance. So that would be my first suggestion. The other thing I didn't hear tonight was the overnight parking part. And there, I would just make the comment that, again, that seems entirely arbitrary. No parking from 2 AM to 8 AM on any township street can't be a safety issue. Because if it was not safe at 2 AM, then it wasn't safe at 1:30 AM. And so if you want no parking overnight because it's dark and there's a safety issue with lighting and all those things, that should be dusk to dawn. And if it's from 2 to 8, that is somebody just deliberately making it so you couldn't park overnight for some reason. And again, same at 8 AM, broad daylight, school buses are running, everybody's out. So you couldn't leave, you make it 6 AM, so the overnight parking makes no sense to me from a safety standpoint. Again, I haven't heard anybody articulate a safety concern. Parking on the grass. I would suggest there are, in addition to the concrete latticework things, there are polymer latticework things now that have very high weight capability. You can actually park a Class 8 truck on them.
Polymer? Did you say polymer? Did you say polymer?
Yeah, it's a plastic.
Plastic, yeah.
It's a plastic latticework. We've used them in the mom's house, which is the morning, so. Here. And they're
You're
very
stormwater
good.
management there.
Small.
You went through stormwater management there.
Yeah, no, that's a, well, she who had.
Uphill.
Not to interrupt you, but I don't know if you introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ted Arnold, I live at 1142 Pension Road.
Thank you.
Yeah. So those are the basic comments. I think you guys are doing a good job of discussing all this stuff. I understand the concerns environmentally about parking on the grass. I necessarily agree with it because of time of the day or whatever that might think out of part to get through all of the dirt into a stream would be measured, I think, in half centuries. But the idea of understanding that being a concern, but that's. So if it were me, I'd make the ordinance say, okay, can't park within X feet of the street, you have consultants that are, more traffic oriented than me. But I would just say, keep cars off the street. And away from the edge of the curb. Let people park overnight if they want to, because there's no reason not to. And if they wanna park on the grass. I can understand not front of the house, side of the house, you know, away from the driveway side of the back of the property line. But I mean, there's lots of people in our neighborhood that have extra kids on the street, so. And I don't know about the rest of the township, I speak kind of because of my environment is Pleasant Road. I see other places, I got other issues, but anyway, that's. There's that. Oh, and I do wanna thank you, I don't know that you ever approved the minutes from last meeting. But I did want to thank whoever.
We did.
Okay, this, I did want to just thank whoever put that together, because I talked last time. And it was a very nice and accurate representation of what I said, and from what I could tell, what everybody else here said, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold.
Just one point. Debbie Argo, 1142 Pension Hall Road, London Grove. Regarding safety. Mr. Hadley. When you park at the end of a driveway. Think about this. Okay. You're parked at the end of the driveway,
Which end?
near the street, the end of the driveway, not in front of you.
You're talking about where the driveway, just
Yes.
road.
The part that you think is unsafe.
Right.
Unsafe. Okay, and you get in the car to drive away. Which people do every day when they leave their driveway. Is it unsafe? It is not. It's not a safety issue. Unless the car's hanging out in the street. And I think we've addressed that. Okay.
I can provide a little bit information about overnight parking if you would like.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I briefly reached out to Chief Leahy because I was curious to know what the citation record is for those who park overnight, and it's fairly small. It seems that the police primarily responds to complaints for overnight parking. There are some areas that get most of the complaints, which is the smaller streets in township, like Wild Goose. But they are not proactively doing enforcement, driving around and issuing citations to those who are parked overnight parking. One reason is that there is no signage posted that says no overnight parking. I also asked, do you know why we have, because those specific provisions are not within zoning, they're within the police power. And I was trying to understand the reasoning why they were put in place, and he didn't really know, so we would have to go back into police commission meeting minutes or township meeting minutes to figure out why it was 2 a.m. till 8 a.m. I agree, I usually see dusk to dawn in regulations for parking. Or it would say on unlit streets, so the street that does not have.
Township. Then there may be good reason to say, okay, you can't park here. Because of, the narrow streets where there's not a lot of visibility over hills.
Or they might be narrow.
Right.
some
narrow
streets.
With over hills, around sharp curves, that kind of thing.
So I just thought it was interesting. I also did a search in our file, and again, we do not keep like an inventory of all code enforcement issues. We have property files that have letters that we send out to property owners with different warnings. And I had over 140 letters that were sent out from like 2014 until now. And some of them are repetitive, and they have to do with grass parking and overnight parking and unpermitted parking areas. So, but it's not a big number. But I don't know what happened prior to 2014. So those probably were not saved letters. So, but I just want to mention that.
Do you have a sense, sort of question for Glenn or Al? Do we have a sense of how narrow a roadway might be where overnight parking would be unsafe? Or just is overnight parking on a roadway inherently unsafe? Or not?
Don't believe the overnight is a traffic safety issue. Again, I don't know, but these sort of ordinances are incredibly common. I mean, you go through Delco, I think it's 2 to 6 to, I think 2 to 6 is, in my experience, has been more common. I don't necessarily know how they were started. If I were to speculate, I'm going to for a moment. You're probably trying to avoid boarding houses or student housing or people overloading the properties. And being this close to a university, that may have been,
People who don't live.
Yes.
Street parking because it's convenient for someone.
there's also the perception that people are parking out overnight to case places. If there are no cars parked on the street, there's not any crime, right? No one's, maybe. I'm.
Is that the statistics?
I would suspect that the overnight parking is more along those sort of lines. Then,
In some communities, there's street cleaning issues. In some issues, there's storm, snow clearing.
Snow clearing, yeah.
Tuesday, Thursday, alternate side of the street, snow emergency route.
Trash pickup.
Yeah, but again, you don't have trash trucks going around between
2 a.m. though.
2 and 8. You'd be hearing a lot more complaints about that if you did. So I would suggest that it's probably from one of those other
Mm.
areas that these came from, but they've been around. I mean, growing up in Lansdowne in Delaware County, that was a thing 50 years ago. I mean,
Would it be difficult for the township to a short-term permission system?
there is,
Kids are home.
there
Kids
is.
are home from college, or you're having a party, or the in-laws are here for the week.
If I may, the specific ordinance reads,
You can get them.
except for vehicles bearing official placards issued by West Town Township permitting parking on designated streets between 2 and 8 a.m.
Yeah, so we, I don't know how many times we've actually gotten a request, even like we've had a couple of weddings, that people would do weddings at their properties. But nobody actually submitted a request for a placard for parking, because usually weddings are done and people go home.
I can still, I don't behave.
So we have that provision in the ordinance.
There is a provision, if your street is added to a list in the ordinance, you can then get a placard for overnight parking. Again, back to Lansdowne, my
Nobody
father calls the police every time he is an overnight visitor, and they're like, okay, we want to ticket the car. We do the same thing in Swampton.
How would this be manageable given the staffing constraints?
To give out,
If somebody's
placards.
has a need for relatively short-term parking, they need to do it on the street.
oh, so if, do you mean that if you go ahead and not have an overnight parking provision at all, and then institute like a West Town Township placard issuance for overnight parking in special circumstances? Okay, I understand. It all depends what the demand is. I mean, I don't know. It really depends on the neighborhood. It's not being enforced now.
Well, unless it's, if the ordinance is in place, will hazard non-compliance, even though it may not be by the plus orders. Well, that's another issue that we really haven't talked about, which is what is the enforceability portion of this? You should change this in some way. Is the staff still going to be, is it still going to be a problem?
So, I mean, for us, yes, we would get the complaints about, why there are cars that are parking, all the way at the edge of the driveway, but it is a few complaints, like it's not many complaints considering that we have almost 5,000 properties in Westtown. Most it's grass and additional parking areas. I don't know if you've seen as you drive around different neighborhoods. We found out there are some parking areas that were added within the right of ways, handouts right of ways, township right of ways, or very close to right of way in the edge of the street, and they are extensive parking areas. I mean, like not for one car, for like 2 or 3 cars. So we'll get a complaint from the neighbors, there are all this looks like a parking garage to them, at least, adjacent to their property, and the first thing they see is this parking of all these cars. So then we ask the property owner to submit for a retroactive permit, we ask him to remove the parking areas, and it becomes quite difficult to get people to remove parking that they just paid for. So there's a combination of different issues. It's all about the goal. If the goal is to limit the amount of impervious surfaces being added, that you want to utilize the most that you have, the most of your driveway, the most of your parking areas that you have, so that you don't have to be forced into having additional impervious. If the goal is other environmental considerations, that you don't want parking on grass because of all other things that we talked about, environmental side, and you would prefer all those areas to be paved, that's different. If you would allow to park on a street overnight, then there is less pressure on property owner to expand the parking area that they have. But also you might run into situations where you have a property owner who has 5 boats sitting in a driveway and all of their cars are on a public roadway. I mean, I'm just,
Yeah.
it's a small instance of that, but
And for most, it's my view, that for most residents, it's a couple of extra cars.
yes.
But my experience in zoning matters is there will always be these outliers
Mhm.
where they have 5 cars in the front yard parked on the grass. Or they have a whole bunch of cars that, sometimes don't have registration parked out in the street. I mean, it will invariably happen, and that's a problem. That is a problem for the township, and we probably have a way to deal with that. That's, that these zoning ordinances are passed so that there are some standards that apply basically to everyone, so that a kind of a minimum standard of compliance can be achieved if the township is willing to enforce the ordinance.
So I used to live over Baldwin's farm there when it was built,
Mhm.
and there was,
Overflow parking?
what's that? They
Overflow.
have an overflow parking, but that doesn't really serve a good purpose. But there was a section of the road that narrows coming down the hill on a curve,
Is it Travis Lane?
so on Picket Way.
Picket Lane, okay.
The road is too narrow for the curve. And the township, the homeowners association and the township agreed to make that a no parking area.
And people park here now, park there now, and I think the sign has been removed.
Well, that's another issue. But where I was headed was. to Just leave the road as, leave all the roads as parking areas overnight. It's not a big deal. If you have to have a road like Picket Way that has a dangerous situation or
Mhm.
or. You know, a need, and you manage it by putting up a sign that says no parking from here to there. But rather than making an ordinance that covers the whole township.
Yes, you can address it road by road. It probably would make it easier on enforcement side with the police because then they have a shorter list of roadways and they are limited because of safety concerns and it's more justifiable. That might be a way to go. And I can talk to police chief, get his feedback on that.
And I think, the emergency management services.
Yes, Jerry and Bob Hall.
Yes. I think because he's gonna be able to give perspective about how our first responder vehicles navigate through our streets during times of emergency.
Yes, like fire trucks, we talked about different fire truck templates with those retaining walls and stokes. I saw on the plan that those retaining walls are still there. And it's hard to go in and out of those flag lots. So, okay, so I can,
All right, but before you do that, is there any direction you would like to give for now?
On what subject?
On any of the things that we talked about, there's a disagreement, I know, between me and Brian and Chris. And a partial disagreement, with you. So I'm not sure that we can pass.
And we're gonna find the same thing.
Well, can I just ask real quick, with Russ saying Picket Way, like he knew that was a dangerous road, there was restrictions placed on it. Would it be easy for you to have to find
a
a
list?
list of roads, or do you have an idea of the roads that you said, yeah, this would be areas that are unsafe?
Well, the current restrictions that we have for roadways, so those were put in place quite a while ago, so I can talk. Township, that's right, not PennDOT. So I can talk to the chief and the emergency management coordinator to see, because we have traffic data, so we can see maybe there are other areas of the township where it would present an issue, while to open up the other roadways that just has a blanket restriction to say that you can do overnight parking. But we do have to make sure that signage is posted, because if there is no signage, my understanding is it makes it difficult for them to enforce.
Right, you can't enforce it, but you're only signing areas where there is no.
Correct, yes, yeah, you just would say no overnight parking, and that's the areas that you would enforce and sign.
Do everything on some
No.
areas that present a safety hazard could be addressed as we find.
We have a lot of cul-de-sacs.
Yeah.
And like in Pleasant Grove, you have a lot of the traffic circles, you don't want.
Oh, yeah.
Parking around the circles.
So yeah, so there would be some areas that probably would have to be off limits, so we can evaluate.
And there's one side parking as opposed to others, I know
Oh,
on my
yeah.
street, for instance, if somebody is having an event. Somehow the attenders want to park on both sides, so you can, when that happens, you cannot
Get through.
get an emergency movement with.
Bless you.
Cannot, the distance between the cars is too small to accommodate
Well, yeah, when we need to maintain, typically the
Is it
fire
20?
department, it's 20 feet clear.
Hmm.
the end of the bulbous-sac, the bulb of any cul-de-sac would probably be off limits because the emergency services needs the full width to turn around. If you have roads that are under, I mean, generally, we would say the minimum width you would need, and this goes slightly against emergency services, would be 16 to 18 feet for two-way travel on low-volume roads, assuming that opposing traffic, when it does happen, would yield each way. So if you've got any road under 24 feet, we're talking about potentially permitting parking on one side.
Mm.
You get to pick the side. And yeah, I mean, this has the potential to, this is.
I just said
it's
about
not-
domino
it's not
effect.
clean.
That's why I said there is a domino effect to every ordinance that you are taking on.
That's one of
Yeah.
the basic problems with this process, is if you make changes, other things might happen.
And I, that's one question.
Hold on a second, please. So do we have any more comments? Because I'm gonna ask for, I will ask for public comment. One more time, and then we should move on to something else. We talk about our easy roads. Like, it's not in this,
We do have a property with lots of kayaks.
RVs and boats. What can you sort of summarize where we are with parking of RVs and boats?
We have what I would call repeat offenders, maybe very handful of property owners that we send warning letters to, because you can see that the boat moved where it's not supposed to be, and then we'll send them the letter and they would park it back. But it's very small number of people. So unless you would like to permit them parking within the front yard, the regulations that we have right now has been working out. One thing that
Regulation now says parking.
prohibited,
Side yard or rear yard
correct,
only,
correct.
and they park it on the driveway surface.
Yes, they have to park it on the driveway. We only had one situation where there was somebody who expected a guest for a long time, like 6+ months. They wanted to live in RV and parked it on a driveway for a while. But how their driveways are configured, it would be within the front yard, so they were not able to do that. So it's been working out, I would say, what we have right now. You can put additional regulations to say that if you have a boat that's sitting in your driveway for 20 years, maybe it's good to screen it. Or put a screen in so your neighbor doesn't have to see it.
Sure.
Okay, the only thing, oh, sorry. The only other thing I would mention, just I realized with all of that last discussion on parking.
Mhm.
With the emergency vehicles and the road narrowing stuff. Really doesn't have anything to do with 2 AM to 8 AM. That's parking any time of the day would affect the emergency vehicles or the cul-de-sacs or any of those things, because the car is there, it's there. So that really doesn't impact the overnight parking part. But it certainly is a thing you guys have to consider in general for the safety of parking. But 2 AM to 8 AM doesn't change that, so if you make that go away just as a general rule, that would be. Well, so that would leave all that other stuff, I think you still have.
Some of it has to be on the sides of the road, okay?
Yeah, those are, yeah, that's all.
I just for what, I don't want
I just,
Right, I don't have any objection to any of the safety at all, I'm just saying. Or park there 1 AM or 2 AM, 4 AM, doesn't change.
One-
a specific time that they're parked.
Yeah, it's the overnight parking part that this ordinance addresses, this ordinance doesn't address. parking in general, theoretically, I'm not in violation of this ordinance if I park in front of my house from 8 a.m. until 2 a.m. Anytime during that period.
Correct.
So where you're having roads that are. People park on both sides and it's too narrow for safety vehicles or cul-de-sacs or any of that stuff, that would have to be addressed in. Some of the ordinance that would take care of that parking, but it wouldn't all be eliminating of 2 a.m. to 8 a.m.
And-
12.
It's whatever, you know, it's.
And I just remember that Amazon now delivers packages overnight. I got my package at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and
That's another problem.
we can put the regulations in place as no Amazon deliveries.
Okay, so, Nilla has offered to talk to, Jerry Denunzio, Emergency Services, and the chief of police,
Mhm.
the police department, to gather some additional information about.
Overnight parking.
Are there any, is there, I sense that we don't have consensus on all issues. To give no direction to make further changes to the. Should we wait until the next meeting to take up this issue again? Or are we able to move ahead on some things?
Well, with Mr. Arnold's suggestion of us, like referencing, like putting in the ordinance. Certain setback of the sidewalk. Instead of what was put in. The right of way, or if that's something you want to consider putting in the language. For next time.
I wouldn't want to do that until our consultants. Agree.
Okay.
Got a note to look up the clear zone requirements.
Yes.
If you want, once that raises.
Clear zone.
That raises substances, accessibility, safety. Lighting.
I believe it'd probably be somewhere around the 8-foot range. But I want to double check that.
Okay.
How's that sound?
I'm okay with what your people think is safe, is good by me. My only concern is walking all the way from my driveway and saying I can't park there.
Right.
But if there's some safety setback, my 5 feet is out of my head, I'm not a traffic engineer. So,
Among the four of us, I think that nuisance, the specific area is something that we're in agreement on. We're not in agreement on all, but allowing me to use more of.
right, and I'm fine, and, yeah, I'm fine with that, and I think whatever your safety people say is the right distance, I'd be okay, but I'm not gonna argue.
And it would be something from where your driveway meets the cartway, or if there's a sidewalk, it would be a
Good
different side.
conversation, and that makes perfect sense.
Thank you, Al.
Imaginary lines are tough.
Say what?
Imaginary lines are tough.
And that sounds very well. And there are places where, like, fortunately, I have a fairly long driveway. My neighbors across the street. Their right of way is probably in their living room. So. You know, by the time you measure the distances and everything, their house is not set very far back from the street. So that's where. You put
Makes sense.
further from the street, that makes sense. But anyway, I appreciate your, that in consideration.
All right,
You guys do
you want to stay for pipeline safety? You want to stay for pipeline safety?
Where's the pipeline?
On that, I was wondering if you.
I believe we need a traffic engineer for pipeline discussion. Conservation.
Yeah, I was wondering about the urban design surprise, but.
Very good.
Thank you guys, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. It's 8:45. You want to talk about pipeline safety and the changes, the ordinance changes that the staff has come up with, stuff for, you can probably talk about. Design. and the ordinance Bella has given us Chester County's model. Conservation design.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Mr. Federico.
I was really hoping to have a majority of the planning commission to weigh in on pipeline related regulations, and the reason why I want to make sure that we are not spending too much time on drafting regulations that you might not be supportive of, because there were different things regarding pipelines that we were trying to address. And for the conservation design as well, it would be nice just to get a feedback on which in general components that the planning commission would like to see in the draft document, so that we can take those components and stuff from the base, and then build on that.
Bella, which would you prefer we do? You want us to look at,
I would say open space.
and you want us to look at conservation design and the open space.
Correct.
Vision. Okay, why don't you, I don't want to presume you too much, Noah, but do you want to introduce the open space requirements that are in the Chicken Model ordinance for us?
Sure. So we talked about last time that the subject of conservation design is fairly complex, because depending on regulations or the final product, there are different components that you have to consider, like open space, layout of recreational areas, active and passive, the difference between the two, the roadway layout, any sensitive environmental features, whether or not there are any considerations for, we talked about scenic landscapes and view sheds before during reviewing the flexible development ordinance. We talked about bonding densities. So I thought that a good way to start was to take a look at sample ordinance language for conservation subdivision in general that the Chester County Planning Commission put together as a base to start. And then the one that stood out the most from adjacent municipalities are provisions from East Vincent Township, just because how easy it is to navigate and read in terms of the design guidelines and things like that. So for sample ordinance language, there are different components that you have to consider: purpose, qualifying conditions. You can choose in terms of which under qualifying conditions, which zoning district that would be applicable to. We talked a little bit about how much vacant land is left to the township in the township. But at the same time, you have to remember that there will be redevelopment opportunities in 5 years, 10 years. We see it now, how many applications we've gotten from West Town School being redeveloped, and shopping centers, or even like a small infill development where you have a small vacant lands between two non-residential properties. So in terms of qualifying conditions, the flexible development procedure that we had in place, we're applicable to AC and R1. That's where you would see a larger tracts in terms of the acreage. You can designate and say this is applicable to 5 or more acres, 10 or more acres. The way that you base that qualifying conditions is on the amount of large tracts that you have in the township. So if we are the township that we have a lot of 30+ acres, so 30+ acres might be a starting point. If you're a township that you have smaller tracts that could be combined, possibly maybe you have 5 acres, 4 acres lots, and you would think, okay, if they would combine 2 or 3 of those, if they can get 8 acres, maybe qualifying condition should be 8 acres. So it's really based on the township, on the character of the township, on assessment in terms of vacant land, on natural features. and just trying to predict a future land use based on current zoning that you have in those areas.
Does staff have a thought about what the trigger acreage should be?
I think for what we have before, we had 10 acres. If you would want to give additional opportunities for small, and then when I say small subdivisions, you can have a row of 5 townhomes. It's a small subdivision. You can do less than 10 acres. Because I don't think you can decide on qualifying conditions until you decide permitted uses. So the next question to you would be, okay, in terms of permitted uses, do we want to have a mixed use residential development? So example would be Axton Main Street, where you have a mixture of apartment complex and commercial restaurants, so like a King of Prussia Village. Those been very popular. Newtown Square has one as well called Alice Preserve, I think, that you're familiar with. So if usually for like larger developments like this, you would need probably more than 10 acres, but that just or another permitted use, you can say, okay, it's not mixed use in terms of residential or non-residential or commercial or office space. We would just want to permit residential. But then you kind of have to think about, is it single family homes? Is it townhomes? Do you want to see a mixture? Like you can do a combination of single family and townhomes. I wish Stokes was a combination of different housing options. It all comes back to a purpose. If the purpose is to provide different opportunities or in terms of the costs and affordable, more attainable housing, you probably want to have a mixture of uses because single family homes would be more expensive than twin homes or condos. So that's another decision to make because, and you kind of have to see depending what type of use you want to permit, that determines which size tract you would need to be able to accommodate that because you can't say, the minimum size is to qualify is 5 acres, but we want commercial and office space and residential because it would be very difficult to fit that on a smaller. And then there's so yes, and then of course there are accessory uses such as major home occupations, which you always have to consider. It's very common now, like if you allow for more single family homes, probably the property owners are more likely to have different businesses that they can rent out of their homes. But if you have a mixed use like twin homes or townhomes or condos, then major home occupations like a landscaping business probably will not be appropriate for that residential use. Then the next important thing, you have to make a decision on percentages. How much of the open space you want to preserve on, let's say, 10 acres. You took 10 acres and you determine I want just single family homes. Then you have to determine how much open space you want to preserve. You also have to determine how would you calculate that open space. So will wetlands, steep slopes, floodplains, other sensitive areas, environmental sensitive areas, are they included in that calculations of open space or it's excluded? So you would say out of 10 acres, 5 acres has to be open space, but every natural feature shall be deducted from that. So in addition to natural features, you are requiring more open space. And then you have to make a decision on, okay, now we know how much open space we want to preserve. how much of that space needs to be passive recreation or active recreation. Then you have to determine what you consider passive recreation, what it would look like. And the main, and I think too, yes, I only had, Jack and Ross participated in all those discussions with Toll Brothers and Stokes about stormwater management facilities. So those large basins that you see, those should be included in calculations of open space or excluded. So that's another subject that comes up. So that's why I said, like, it gets a little bit, but that's how you go about conservation design. And only then, after you determine X amount of acreage of open space minus all the features, whether or not stormwater is included, types of housing units, then you go into dimensional standards and you say, okay, what are the setbacks for those homes? What would it look like? What do the roadways look like? Sanitary sewer, how high? The higher you permit, the more likely you're gonna have a mix of residential uses. So then you go through that exercise, trying to determine what that would look like. And then it goes into lighting and overflow parking and layout of the roadways and trails. Try to remember if there's, I forgot anything else. So, and the tree protection and landscaping, and then you have your perfect development. But there is a lot of different configurations that you can do. It really depends. It really depends what the purpose of that conservation design is. If the purpose to preserve the most open space in addition to all natural features and to dense development in such a way that it allows for greater number of dwelling units on a smaller portion of that property, or is the goal is to provide a variety of housing options for different reasons. There are different reasons why you would do that. Allow just enough of open space instead of traditional development. You can always calculate how much open space you would get with traditional development versus conservation design. So it is a lot to go through. That's why there's flexible design procedures, how many times the planning commission went through to figure out ways to revise it. And then in addition to that, you can talk about density bonuses. So you're trying incentivize it to the developer to say, we would give you more dwelling units if you preserve more open space. Because from the developer standpoint, it does work in their favor to condense the development because it is less roads, less sanitary sewer they have to build. So they do save money on that. And we talked about bonus densities and how that works. But so what I would like the planning commission to think about, because I know it's a lot, is to read through this basic model ordinance and try maybe come up with the list of different items or what you would like to see. And there is no right or wrong answer. It really depends on the community. There are some communities, they just want single family residential homes. Like for example, in West Town, we are primarily single family detached home community. If you would like to structure this provision in such a way that it's only townhomes or a variety of twin homes and townhomes or just condos, you can do that. It all comes back to what is the main goal of your conservation besides conservation? What is the other goal that you are trying to achieve with this type of development?
So what the document you sent us, so the whole thing is The sample.
Yeah, so the whole thing, yep, it's a sample and it's really, I like the way that Chester County has provided that because it makes it easier. You go through and you kind of like, okay, for this, I think we should, and then you try to put pieces together to see what you would come up with.
Right, and Mila has also summarized. Some of our joining municipality
Oh, that's right.
ordinances and. And it therefore gives you an idea of some of the choices they made. Policy issues.
Yes, and Tracy is the one who did a lot of work on that because it is a lot of work trying to figure out to find the conservation design provision because there are different names for it: conservation, cluster development, and in some township codes, it's really hidden.
And Mila has also provided what township of East
Vincent.
actually did. So you have summary of nearby municipalities, open space stuff, you have Chester County model ordinance. You have what East Vincent decided to do. And I don't know whether East Vincent based its analysis on the model ordinance or not. It's not clear to me, but they did or they didn't. But it's just another example, as Ben says, the approach to this, which is open space, denser development. It's really what it is, but.
And it's very simplified.
Say what?
It is like if you look at our flexible development procedures and like East Vincent model, it's much easier to follow. That's why, because we talked about making it simpler.
Right. That's the section 9 towards the bottom of the email, the document,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have it on.
Yeah.
That's what I'm just trying to.
Yep.
Double check and make sure I'm on place.
Yeah. So this is just gives you like as you go through exercise on your own individually, looking through sample ordinance, and you have East Vincent one, you can kind of see what does this municipality decide to do in terms of their conservation design, but it's really driven by the community. In the comprehensive plan, it does advocate for conservation design type ordinance. It talks about mixture of residential uses, but of course it does not specify exactly how to go about it. So here's an opportunity to look at the tracks that you have or potential tracks that could be developed. And if they are small on a smaller side, then you might want to consider drafting regulations that are for more denser residential developments like townhomes versus or twin homes, like Sawmill Court was not a very extensive development versus single family homes. You really need a lot of physical space.
Does the staff like one of our adjoining municipalities, open space or conservation design ordinances? Are you willing to say that you like one as opposed to other?
I just, because every municipality focused on specific issue, I think it's very difficult to say. I'm not a big fan of land developments like Alice Preserve. It seems a little bit not naturally, yeah, and it's not very natural way of land development because it's very targeted. It's almost like it's its own island with different uses put together. It is connected to the neighborhood. You can walk from there. But you know, Axton Main Street, you saw how they redeveloped that whole area with commercial and apartment complexes. If you like more of I think Chatsford, there is a map on the Chester County Planning Commission website of all conservation. If you want to look at one in Chatsford, you would see it right going Route 1. I thought that was development was done very nicely. It's very natural. It's all residential, but it's a townhome and it has a trail. To me, it's one of the older conservation design developments. But no, it's all about what the goal is of these regulations and what are the opportunities too, because you have to consider adjacent land use. So if you have a large tract that's surrounded by commercial areas, you have to consider whether encouraging single-family dwellings makes sense or more condensed development makes sense. And then the one thing we didn't talk about is like you would see in the East Vincent model, depending where the conservation design is permitted, it's either uses by right or by conditional use. So ours was by conditional use only. So that's another thing to consider. You might say, well, if this meets this qualifying conditions, it's permitted by right. If it doesn't meet those qualifying conditions, then it has to be permitted by conditional use. You can consider that as well. But it's a very complex set of regulations because you have to know what your end product is before you start on drafting the ordinance. There's a tons of models.
Yeah, so in addition to reviewing those materials closely, I think the planning commissioner should maybe take a look at the comprehensive plan. Try to extract what some of the
Goals.
policy goals
Hmm.
that are in the comprehensive plan are, and how we might achieve some of those goals with a flex development, because that would answer, if you do that, that will answer some of these baseline type questions that Miller has posed. What do you want? Do you want to preserve the rural character of the community?
Yeah, like we learned that you have to put setback requirements. We learned that a hard way, but because we didn't have
Yeah,
that.
and we want lots, we want lot lines.
Mm-hmm.
We want side yards, we want rear yards and front yards.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
want a lot of front.
And you don't, and you do not, but you do not want a field that is not usable.
Yeah.
Stormwater.
So it's kind of, I understand this is kind of big, but we're not ready to make any decisions.
A lot of work.
Yeah, that's some work.
Yes,
All right, you wanna, it's a little after 9, you wanna skip the pipeline stuff for another night? And call it a kitchen, call it an evening? Oh, but okay, I'm gonna go. You're gonna skip it? Yes, sir. Okay. I'm gonna go to public comment. Anybody online?
I don't believe so.
Mr. Sedkovich is on?
No,
Did you call him? Did you call
I think he expended all his energy at the board of supervisors on Monday night.
that might be the reason why we don't have many people today.
He exhausted himself.
him? No. Okay, reports. I didn't attend the supervisors meeting, so if you wanna, did you, Chris did?
It's a need.
First wants to, yeah.
Do you want some?
You know, I'll tell you, Mila did an awesome job with the old business with the extension request for the land development approval plan for Stonecroft. So I won't repeat that.
Okay,
You covered that very well, obviously. The board of supervisors did pass the resolution for declaring the Darlington Inn property surplus, thereby authorizing an appraisal. And I believe they agreed to, when they seek the appraisal, they'll use an entity that is familiar with historic properties and get an appraisal that shows a value with and without the facades.
so once they, and once they get an appraisal on a property that just shows here is the value with no restrictions, then they can have a more informed conversations about, okay, if you put restrictions on the property, what it would look like. The challenge would be based on extent of restrictions, it would impact the value in a different way. So it's almost like you have to know the restrictions before you know what the value would be and how would it impact. So, yeah, but it's, yes, that I agree that they want to explore those options.
Are public auctions like this subject to minimum bids?
So they have to establish a minimum bid, but you are not required to do an appraisal. But how would you establish a minimum bid if you don't know what the property is worth? So they do have to come up with the number.
But the auction requirements will have a minimum.
Yes. Yes.
Kind of like a reserve.
Hmm?
A reserve,
Yes, of
like
some,
we're not gonna
except,
accept your bid if you don't meet the reserve.
okay, yeah. I've never done public auction, so that would be interesting.
And tell us about the historical commission. That was a big deal.
Oh, Chris
Oh,
is
I'll tell you, I'm not there yet. I want to talk about the township manager being authorized to execute an extension of the option of municipal waste contract.
So your trash would be picked up next year?
Yeah, and they gave you that authority, correct?
Yes.
All right, same thing with the road maintenance contract for South Concord Road inside Cider Mill Way.
We only have a couple of weeks left before school is in, and we have to do 3 roadways now.
Yeah, I thought the East Pleasant Road was,
West
West
Pleasant.
Pleasant Road was gonna be done.
Yeah, so the issue had been, because we received only one bid, the contractor was a qualified subcontractor, but not a qualified prime on what the PennDOT requires for liquid fuel funds. So we had to wait for PennDOT to clear the subcontractor as a contractor to proceed with the work, and that's what delays the project. And we had the same situation with South Concord and Cider Mill Way. 2 contractors who bid on a project are not prime, they're subcontractors. So that's what creates the delay in that.
Right, the moment you've been waiting for. The board of supervisors did accept the resignation of the chair of the historical commission. That was Patrick, right, McDonough.
So no, for resignation, it was Fred Magner because he moved on to the supervisors.
Right.
And Steve Lahoff.
Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, I got Steve.
Steve resigned.
Steve Patrick, so. And then there was a tremendous amount of public comment on the issue of the consideration for the removal of the current appointments to the historical commission. And without going into a lot of detail, basically, it was 99 people who spoke were not in favor of removing the appointments, or the folks who had the appointments. I think it was Carol DeWolf who was kind of in favor of the board of supervisors in terms of them taking action. At the end of the night, at the end of the day, basically the motion carried and all members of the historical commission have been removed. And the comments were ranged from, being open and honest with the taxpayers to, you're doing things in secret, so, you can imagine what it was like, you can go and watch the YouTube video. But it was a lot of consternation, very long evening. So.
And I think it's finished up with name calling as well.
It did, and I wrote down a couple of the comments, but we don't need to put these in the minutes, but. I kind of like chuckled to myself, and only because I've never heard this referenced in conjunction with a man. Somebody said that Dr. Fred Wagner, resting bitch face.
What?
A resting bitch face. And that just struck me as like, wow,
I saw that ad hominem attacks.
yes. It was, there was one person basically who logged out a ad hominem attack. Directed at each individual board supervisor, so it was a unanimous decision, so that's why. I stood in the back of the room at that point when the crowd was leaving. And Jody continued with the announcements, and honestly, I just couldn't hear. So, I don't know if you want me to talk about the announcements, I don't really have any of that.
No, just different events, but one important event to remember is August 2nd in downtown Westchester. It's Westchester Area Council of Government joint events. Township staff have participated in it and provided feedback. And they dedicated a lot of their time to that. It is a combined effort, so if you're available to come out and support it, it's gonna be downtown Westchester.
What happens?
So it's gonna be like a living history, it's gonna be a closed street, different stations, a timeline. There is also a VIP party in the garage. If you're interested, there are still tickets left. So it's a very well organized venture between multiple municipalities.
Is that the one where they're leading the declaration?
Yes. Yes, and
Yes.
And then we are gonna have two people from West Town who has been, I believe has been chosen. I'm gonna confirm with Pat, but I think it's a younger and an older resident of West Town. They've been chosen from West Town Township to be a part of the regional declaration. So that was the positive.
It ended for a moment on a higher note. You guys withstood a lot of bars, tell us your words.
Yeah, a lot of stoning.
Hey, thank you, Chris, for your report.
And I can't believe Jack missed the meeting. From all the meetings, that's the one.
I was on the cell phone.
What time did you eat that?
How convenient.
Oh, I'm not surprised, yeah. That's what happens when you travel.
But I mean, that's just people waiting.
Yeah.
I'm waiting
It's not.
for the call.
Oh, geez.
Once I get the call, I can move out into the lane and travel, took an hour.
Oh, geez.
Really? Yeah. Yeah,
It would be faster walking.
yeah, so that is one reason why people park the access road at night drive, right? Because they don't want to get trapped, that's right, in the cell phone.
Ah,
I've had that before, but I've never had.
He's always saying, right?
The airlines, the traffic is becoming airlines, that's what it keeps more bad.
hmm.
It's an odd way to get out, there's a stop sign, there's a turn, and then go right. A lot of traffic coming in this direction.
It would be, it could be a lane. I bet you
You have to, I'm sure everybody would block the box, eventually you did possible.
So thanks for subbing in such short. Okay. the
Yeah,
next-
Chris, you have to take it
The
on.
next PC meeting will be the 5th of August, so you have next PC rep at the Board of Supervisors meeting, which will be on August 3rd. Is Kevin Flynn as the primary, Satin as the backup. And
I did see Kevin, a giant, a couple weekends ago, and he said that he will be back, so you might want to follow up with him to see.
I did it once, and he thought that his schedule would be
Freed up.
calming, solved.
Okay, yep, that's what he told me. So Ross would be there.
event, if you can. Maybe take your Kevin.
It's gonna be an easy meeting, I promise.
You can always let me know and I can possibly jump in too, thank you.
All right, is there any other business?
No.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Want to keep meeting? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, and opposed, no.
And it's terribly, all gonna resign.